to just start off by understanding how the brain does this, let's start with an illusion. What I want you to do is to draw a dot and a cross on a small piece of paper, approximately 10 centimeters in between. What I want you to do then is to hold the paper at an arm's length and hold your right eye while you're looking at the cross. The cross should be on your right side. By moving the paper slowly towards you, you will see that the dot disappears. If you then move the paper away or closer to yourself, you will see that the dot reappears. What does that tell us? It tells us that the eyes are not perfect. They have blind spots. But it also tells us that the brain is actually filling in with meaning where there's no meaning. So even though your experience of the world is incomplete, your brain tells you a story that it seems to be complete. In the same way, we can look at different visual illusions, such as this one. Here you can see that there are black squares, but what you can also see is that once you look around the different squares, in between them there might be some light gray areas. But once you look at those areas, they disappear. How about this one? Do you see a white triangle? Look closer. There's no white triangle. It's just an illusion. This is because the brain is trying to fill in with meaning. It tries to understand the world around it, where there's not necessarily a meaning at all. From this we can conclude that the world is, at least part of it, an illusion. What you see and how you experience the world is not a mere reflection of how the world actually is. It's a reconstruction of the world. So how does the brain work? How about sounds? Think about jingles, or think about the sound that your mouse makes when you're clicking your computer, or when you're opening your smartphone. Do you think that that sound is incidental? No, it's highly designed. Every single sound that you are aware of when it comes to products is typically designed. Even shutting the door of a Mercedes car. Let's take the example of a single study we did here at the Copenhagen Business School. In this study, we tested the effect of the intensity of an odor and people's preference. What we found was that increasing the intensity of an odor was pleasant until a certain point, after which the preference for that odor dropped. So this means that the more you use of an odor, the more people like it until a certain point. Interestingly, this was mostly found for women, while for men, there was no such real effect. To follow up on that study, we also combined intensity of odors with brands. And what we also found there was that the stronger the intensity of the odor had an effect on people's preference for the brand, until a certain point, after which a stronger intensity actually led to a negative effect on brand preference. So what we have just seen here is how the senses can affect us as consumers.
So that works. Let's kind of pan that out a bit. So how does that actually work? So you say you send people inside the store, they get to a specific point where there's a shelf and there's some products on the shelf. How do you actually know that? So you, of course, with eye tracking, then you can go in and you can see people are looking at this particular product, and then what? How can you then extract? You know, how can you extract the emotional response, for example?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, you can put an EEG headset on them while they walk around with it. So basically, you can sit live. Let's say that you're doing the study, and then you can sit. You know, when you start them to go with the the shopping cart. Then you can basically sit live and observe what the emotion responses are and mark different places of data, even though it's a head-mounted system, not only for the more remote system. So, and then you kind of find out, okay, now they come over to the shelf, and then of course it's about, the ones that will succeed in this industry is the ones that can build the right methodologies. That's not our expertise. That's what corporations do or service providers that use our platform. But we just create the transparency and make it possible to do it. But it's about building the right methodology. How long time does it take from they come to the shelf? You can use time to first fixation on the product, and then we have tools to really find out. Like what we call an area of interest, exactly when people they look here at that product, what is the emotional impact? And that's what you can do in our analysis side, where you basically go in and really find out only the emotional response when they looked at a specific place.
So if I had an eye tracker on me now, and
Yeah.
I could kind of draw an area of interest
Yeah.
on your face, but also on your label,
Yeah.
and maybe something third here, and I will be able to basically extract the information from that every time. When I only look at that,
Yes.
only look at that, and only look at that, I have that as 3 different columns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Exactly. So that's kind of just make it very easy to get access to that. And when we talk about a lot of data here, right? So some of the high-end EEG headsets we work on, I mean, it's more than 256 measurements per second,
Right.
and across a lot of channels, right? I mean, there's depending on what kind of EEG headset you use and so on. That's just we're talking very big data here. So these kind of tools that you can drag out the right big data but still get them smaller than humongous is really, really important, and that makes it possible for you to kind of very quickly make an analysis and build your own scripts and small softwares to do that.
Okay. So finally,
My name is Per Møller. I work at the University of Copenhagen, where I study the senses. So we try to understand how the senses work. And that has to do with what goes on in the brain. So it is psychology, and since it is psychology of the senses, you could refer to it as sensory psychology. There is a sort of huge problem nowadays of overeating and obesity, right? I mean, in America it's 2 out of 3 who are overweight. They're not obese, but overweight. BMI larger than 25. And then one might say, woo, this is because our foods taste far too good and we cannot limit intake of all these nice things. This is why people eat too much and get fat, right? So that might suggest, if that theory is correct, that we can never have too much of a good thing. I think that it is actually quite the opposite. And we can definitely have too much of a good thing. One example is if you eat a food you like a lot. If you eat that to satiation, so now you're sort of getting satiated, you will experience that it tastes less good than it did originally. That is called sensory specific satiety. In other areas of pleasure, like sexual pleasures, it is well known that there is a certain refractory period that, you can go about sexual activity for a while, it'll end up in some orgasm, but then you need to take a break before you can go on. And I think that it works in the same way with olfactory pleasures. I do not think that our reward systems are sort of like an infinite basin that you can just keep filling. The system reacts by itself by disliking what you have had a lot of. So for reasons like that, I think that you can indeed have too much of a good thing.